Hey everybody, welcome to the Dad Challenge podcast. My name's Josh. Thanks for joining me. Well, today we got more of a serious video. I actually asked this very apparently divisive question on my community page. It actually did surprise me. Generally, I'm not surprised, but I am surprised and not surprised, and I'll tell you why in a second. But I'm going to tie it all into what's happening with Jonathan Saccone Joly and his wife over on the Saccone Joly channel, what they're doing with their daughter Edie, and what's going on. And so it's going to be a really, really important topic. It's going to get a little bit political, considering this is a huge topic of conversation right now. And as you guys know, I kind of sit in the middle on this thing, but I am leaning one way on this, and I'm going to admit it today. Okay, because this is a conversation that absolutely needs to happen because it involves children. It shouldn't be divisive, and that's the problem. But here we go. If you don't like the political angle of what I take on this channel, this one might be one you want to avoid. Because at this point, I think the conversation needs to be had, and there are people who think that it should not be had. And so me being me, we're gonna have the conversation. So let's talk about it. So if you follow me on YouTube, which you are because you're here, I took a poll. And I do this once in a while. Sometimes I want to spark conversation. Sometimes I actually want to get your opinion. And sometimes it's both. And this one is both. And I asked this question on Twitter as well. And it's going to be interesting to note that Twitter had a completely different skewed answer than YouTube did. If I took this poll on Reddit, it would also have a skewed version. Okay? Because these communities are different. Twitter is a place where more leftist ideologues and ideologies are pushed and argued over and like tooth and nail, die on a hill type of thing. Whereas YouTube, I find you tend to get an answer generally. And I think my audience is pretty balanced. I know a lot of people think this is just this big echo chamber, but I think you guys aren't just some big echo chamber. I think that most of our values do align, considering especially when it comes to, the exploitation of children online and things like what Jonathan Joly's doing. But I was surprised by the answers I got from this question, considering I know that you guys aren't scared to talk about this type of stuff, but apparently we are. So here's the question. If you could choose if your child was trans or not, what would you choose? 4% said they would choose a trans child, which I think they might have got the question confused, and I know maybe I'm skewing it myself, but 96% said no, I would not want a trans child. And so my answer here would be, obviously, no, I wouldn't want a trans child, because the trans-identified people who go through life have a way harder life. That can't be argued. And this is why. Because trans-identified individuals are marginalized. We can't argue that, okay? There's a big debate going on right now in the world about it all, and there's like something just happened in New Zealand. This girl named Posey Parker went to talk about women's-based rights, sex-based rights, about how women need their own safe spaces and everything else because of what's going on in the world, and I tend to lean with that. I do believe that women, especially in sports, are being eliminated from sports when they're competing against men, and I know people are going to be like, Josh, you're a transphobe, and at this juncture, if you think the idea that biological men should not compete against biological women is transphobic, then I guess I'm transphobic. I guess I'll just have to live with that. Because I honestly believe, as a guy, especially as a dad of a daughter, that there is a big thing that is going on and people are like, it's not happening. It absolutely is happening, okay? And again, you'll see this question, people will call me a transphobe for just asking this question, because I've got you stuck in a conundrum. But the answer here is, and I'll come back to the conundrum, but the answer here is everybody should say no. Just based on the fact that if we could choose, even though we can't, no, we can't, but if you could, would you not choose the easiest path for your child? Everybody would say that. But this is when it comes down to like, what would make your child's life a little easier? Would you choose that path for your child? You can't, but would you? And so many people couldn't answer the question. It's not that they couldn't. They wouldn't, because the connotation right now to answer that question, if you answered it honestly, would be that you would be transphobic, and nobody wants to be labeled that, except I don't give a shit anymore. All these phobic comments, homophobic, transphobic, freaking xenophobic, blah, 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 all of it has lost its power. It literally means nothing to anybody anymore. Some people, even in the right, like if you look at someone like Matt Walsh or people from Daily Wire and all those guys over there, if you call them transphobes, they actually take it as a cloak of pride at this point. Right, Matt, I think it was Matt Walsh who got like Transphobe of the Year by some magazine or by something like that, and he's like it's a trophy that he wears proudly. The people who use these monikers and say, "Oh, how dare you say all these things? You're transphobic." You've lost all power in saying anything anymore. You call people Nazis when they're not. You call people, misogynist when they're not. You've lost all power because it doesn't hold any value anymore to say that to somebody. No one gives a shit if they're called that. And that's just basically what happened here. And I knew it was going to happen. And that's why I did it. Because I definitely want to tie this into the Jonathan Saccone Joly thing, okay? So again, let's come back to the conundrum. The conundrum, and to answer this question honestly, is that if you say, no, I wouldn't want a trans child, then you would be labeled a transphobe, because some people do care, I guess, about being labeled transphobes. Because they want to say that they're so welcoming and accepting of everybody and everything, and maybe they really are. But to answer this question honestly, you'd have to look inward and say, damn it. If I wouldn't want a trans child, that means I'm transphobic. And let me tell you this, you're not. It does not make you transphobic to not want your child to suffer through an existence that is very hard. And that's the right answer. And if those people who say, yes, I would want a trans child, there's something deeper going on there. If you go to my Twitter one, I think it was 23% said, yes, I want a trans child. That's where we're going to land today. Okay? If you want a trans child, why? Right? And some of the answers I got on this poll, and I wouldn't go through them all because there's like 315 answers, by the way, okay? Of the 315, there are at least 3 in there that were really eye-opening. One said, I'm gay, my parents were gay. When I came out to them, my parents were super upset. They were disappointed because they realized the life that they went through and they didn't want me to suffer through that same life. That person can't be transphobic or homophobic because they're gay, right? But if I said the same thing, it makes me transphobic. How does that make any sense to you? The other one says, I'm trans, and I would not want my kid to be trans, right? They're not transphobic for saying that, so why am I? A lot of people were honest. I would not wish my child to have a more difficult life than me. There were a bunch, right? But the overall majority of people in this were, if you sort by new, because the top comments were voted up that said I wouldn't choose that, and that's because people don't want to answer the question, so they vote up their answer. Kids should make their own decisions, yes, but that's not the question. The question is, if you could choose, what would you choose? More people avoided the question because, again, I don't think they want to come to terms with what's really in their heart and their mind. Because they think to say that I don't want a trans kid means that they're trans. It means that they're transphobic, and it doesn't. A lot of people would say I would accept my child for who they are, and that's great. I would too. I think most of you would. Okay, but that's not the question. And so many people deferred to that because they wanted to feel good about themselves. Okay, and I know that's going to tie into this too, because I'm virtuous and I want to virtue signal on the fact that this. I think this trans conversation is really important because so many people use it to virtue signal. And I know that's going to be like, you're transphobic and I don't care. Okay, because this is where the world is right now. I've said this on many videos in the past. To be a victim in our society today, especially in the Western culture, is to be honored above most. And that's why TikTok is a super toxic place. Because those people with the most victimhood status points are the most celebrated, especially on TikTok and on social media. Like if you go on there and you say you have, I think it's a personality disorder, or multiple personality disorder, whatever they called that thing. Those people, if you go read those comments of those people who say, hey, my name's Ted and I'm the gatekeeper of this body. And then they go like this and they're like, hey, my name's Lucy and I'm the cook of us. And you go read those comments, go read them. Okay? It's almost all positive. Oh, yes, queen. Good for you. Okay? We are celebrating mental illness. Okay? If I were to ask the question, do you think that being transgender is a mental illness? Okay? We all know the answer is gender dysphoria is a mental illness, but you can't say that anymore because that's transphobic. That's why people wouldn't choose this for the children. Most people wouldn't. But those who would, and again, where I want to focus this conversation, those on my Twitter profile said 23% of the people who voted. Let me just go there. I'll show you. So here it is. Hypothetical question. 22.9% of 200 votes, not that many people, it's not as many as YouTube, say yes to a trans child. What? And of the people who voted here, 11,000 votes. This is the reason why the conversation is heating up, because of videos like this. This is a 13-year-old boy dressing in drag while adult men cheer him on and film him on stage. In New Zealand, Posey Parker went to talk about women's safe spaces, and she might be transphobic, she might be anti-trans, but I think she's pro-woman, which makes her anti-trans in the world. This is what happens when a woman goes to speak about safe spaces for women. Most of these people here are men breaking down the barriers, coming after her, trying to literally kill her. Okay, and if you needed proof that women need safe spaces, they just proved it. Most recently, the conversation is heating up. This UFC fighter, who's, I think, Holly Holmes or something like that, just beat somebody and had a platform.
Something that's been on my heart, and I feel like I have the platform to say it, I need to say it. I just feel it's really sad on the sexualization of our children right now, and we need to protect them, whatever that may be. Let's protect the children, please. Do anything we can to help.
Protect the children, stop sexualizing the children. Now, this is a conversation that's heating up, and it's the hottest conversation it's ever been. Okay? It's getting crazy. And when I step into this conversation, okay, is when children get involved in this. Now, my stance, as you know it, and I don't care what anybody says, children don't have sexualities. I think the phrase that I think someone said online is like, if you have a vegan cat, we all know who's making the decisions. Okay? Children don't have identities outside of who they are as children. I'm sorry. If you have a 4-year-old who is transgender, we all know who's making the decisions. It is not the child. It is not the child. Go to my Twitter poll. The 23% of those people who want that for their children, they actually exist. Now, I know Munchausen syndrome by proxy is not the actual term for it, and maybe the DSM-5 needs to be updated with a term like Munchausen syndrome by proxy for parents who push gender ideology onto their children. Because it is actually a thing, and it is actually happening. In my church that I worked at, it happened. This guy brought his kid and his 4-year-old girl, and we want you to use her pronouns, her preferred blood. And we're like, this girl is 4. Only way this happens is if that ideology is being pushed onto that child by their parents. And there is proof everywhere about this, okay? Jazz Jennings is one of those topics right now that is happening. This very, very crazy topic about it was a girl, born a boy, transitioned at 4 years old, then got a TV show out of this whole thing, got multiple, I think 3 to 4 surgeries to fix her problems. The mother recently came on her reality television show and was talking about the bottom surgery and how you have to dilate it. And if she doesn't dilate it, I'm going to go do it for her, and telling this all online.
But with her, I'm worried about like her mental well-being and her dilation. The minute she leaves my house, we have a dilation problem. I have woken Jazz out of a dead sleep and taken the dilator and put the lubrication on it and said, here, you take this and you put it in your vagina. If not, I will. But Jazz is bad, even when I'm home once a day. I would be so mad if she goes away to college and that thing seals up. I will wring her neck. Can you imagine? No, I can't imagine.
Regardless of what you think about this topic anyway, these kids cannot give informed consent to this story being shared in the world, which is why obviously we're going to get to that with Jonathan Saccone Joly. Okay? It cannot be shared. It is not anybody's business what's going on. And your child cannot give informed consent to what is happening. And Jazz Jennings is a perfect example of that. If you look at Jazz Jennings, you cannot tell that Jazz was born a boy. Okay? She looks like a girl. When she was 14, she looked just like any girl. You couldn't tell her apart at all. And that's a very convincing thing, but that all happened because the mom wanted that to happen. Some people think that because she wanted a girl and she had 3 boys, she just turned the last one into a girl. But now if you look at what is happening with Jazz Jennings, it seems like she's regretting everything that's happened. She's starting to wake up to what has really happened. She admittedly has an eating disorder and is ballooned by, she's up to 260 pounds or something like that. The stress and the pressure of the public eye on her at all times has been killing her. And this mom has been raking in millions of dollars while doing this to her daughter. And it's actually the grossest thing I've ever seen. And that is exactly what is happening with Jonathan Saccone Joly. Jonathan Saccone Joly is trying to make Edie the new Jazz Jennings. And it is not appropriate, it is not right, it is disgusting. Kids aren't trans. And I can't wait to see all the comments on my hate thread. I can't wait. If you push that your kid comes to you and says one day, I'm uncomfortable in my body, I don't think I am who I am, you have to look at the underlying, where is that coming from? And a lot of it's coming from schools, by the way, if you didn't know that. It absolutely is. They don't just out of the blue think, duh, holy, I'm this other thing. It's got to be implanted somewhere.
Our stay back went so well. My kids are super sweet and talented. My favorite part of the day, though, was in the last class that I went to. There was a kid that says, oh my gosh, you're non-binary. So is my sister. Look at this picture of them. That's why I'm out. That's why I'm visible. That's why representation matters.
A lot of people were asking in the comments of my last couple of videos about my anchor chart. My anchor chart's about my pronouns. It says, my name is Mixed Cogdill. My pronouns are Z, Zem, Zir, and Zirs. How to refer to Mixed Cogdill. Mixed C is my teacher. Z is multilingual. Students practice and speak Spanish with them. Their hobby is learning languages.
Right? We are humans. And I'm not saying it doesn't always happen that way, and maybe there are people who do think that from a young age, but for the most part, especially in this day and age, it is a social contagion that is affecting our children, and that's when I step in and have a conversation about it. The increase in the amount of kids who are identifying as a different gender or whatever is something like 4,000%. And then you get people arguing, well, they've always been there. Have they? Because I grew up and I didn't know anybody like that. There were tomboys and there were effeminate men. And then generally either they stayed that way or they grew out of it when they got older. There are so many tomboys on Twitter think, thank God I didn't grow up in today's age. I would have been transitioned and had puberty blockers and had my boobs cut off and had a penis put on my body. Right? That's exactly what's happened. They're saying, oh, you don't conform to gender norms, which they think is a made up thing anyway. So then you must be the other gender. It's such a conundrum, it doesn't even make any sense. So the increase has happened and children are now suffering because of it. If you don't think, then there is a huge number of detransitioners having a huge conversation right now, especially on Reddit. Go ahead and look at it. It's called Detrans. Go read. Go read for yourself. Thousands and thousands of them who were convinced at a young age to do this are now very much upset with what they had to do. If you're brave enough, go look at what a phalloplasty is. Cut the skin off your arm and it looks crazy and they turn that into a penis. And kids are being castrated. And I know people are like, okay, it's not happening with kids. It absolutely, Jennings is a perfect example. 17 years old, she had her surgery. Now let's talk about puberty blockers a little bit because we're going to get to this video with Jonathan Saccone Joly taking his kid to a gender clinic. Everybody thinks, well, they have to go through these gender clinics, they have to go to these people and they have to go through these professionals to get this. But if you take your kid to a gender clinic, do you think a gender clinic is going to be like, no, we don't think this is true? No. Gender clinic is there and those people exist in those clinics to affirm it, not to deny it. So when you say I take my kid to these doctors and these people, those people are only there to affirm. You're not getting a proper diagnosis at all. I'm going to be talking about Eugenia Cooney soon because I just saw a video that broke my heart. In my opinion, if you think that a child who has gender dysphoria should be affirmed in that gender dysphoria by having healthy breasts cut off or having medicine that stops puberty or that castrates them or anything like that, you would then have to agree that Eugenia Cooney wants to be what she is and that is healthy and that's okay. I conflate the two because both of those things are something that's wrong with your brain. Both are wrong. Neither of them should be affirmed. That's what I believe. And I know, again, might get me canceled. At this point, this conversation is heating up, and this is my take on it, because when it comes to children, we're not doing enough, right? And Saccone Joly, and now you got Jess Pham talking about her daughter's sexuality. You've got Jennings. You've got all these people in the world who are using this for clout. But we have to talk about the root cause of all this stuff so that when we talk about why are they doing this, we have to understand it. Because victim points matter more now than anything else. And that's why if you were honest with my poll, you would answer this question like this. No, there's no way I'd want my kid to go through that because it's one of the hardest things you could ever. I would not want my kid to have a mental illness. That's the right answer. But so many people are afraid to answer that question. You cannot choose. That's the whole point of the hypothetical. You'll never be able to. And I do hope that you engage with your child if this happens. I do hope you love and accept them, okay? But there are ways you can love and accept them without doing puberty blockers, cutting off body parts and everything else. You can do what I'm going to do if that ever happens to me, which is the wait and watch approach, which I think my kids are relatively not doing any of that stuff. My kids are falling into their gender norms, to be honest with you. And I'm happy about that. I really am. I'm happy that they are comfortable in their bodies and who they are. But if it were to happen, I would take the wait and watch approach. And this is something that no one really talks about, and they should. Abigail Schreier wrote a book, Irreversible Damage. I know a lot of people are like, oh, don't read it. Read it. Okay, read that book. I'm telling you, it's one of the most important books with this conversation right now. And if someone wants me to read another book on the opposite end of the spectrum, I'm happy to read that too. I really would. I promise you I would. Okay, so if you've got something that I should read that props up this idea that we should be doing this to our children, I'll read it. I will. But I promise you, I can't see how you could convince people that doing this to children is right. But she talks about this wait and see or wait and watch approach. Where if your kid comes to you and says, look, mom, reads a book or a teacher says something or another student says something to them or their friend says something and I think I'm that too. Okay, great. Well, let's talk about what that means, right? Here's what the world thinks it means. Here's what I think it means. What do you think it means? Have an honest conversation with your kids. Love them no matter what, but wait and watch. Because I think if everybody who has this going on within their children just took the wait and watch approach while supporting and loving and being there for the child no matter what, I think this would not be the contagion it is. That's my take on it. You wait and watch and wait and see, because most of them will grow to that. Also, we're not letting kids vote before they're 18, get tattoos, smoke, drink, make choices that they shouldn't be making. Right? We don't let our kids even choose their bedtime. We don't let them choose what they're going to eat all the time. Okay? We make the choices for our kids that are going to keep them on a healthy path. But if you've got a 4-year-old who's transitioning from one sex to another, nope, those kids can't make that choice. Okay? You can support and love, but you just wait. Because kids change their mind every 3 days. And this is just that. But if you have a parent that is pushing this on a child, it becomes their thing, like what Jonathan's doing, what happened to Jazz Jennings, that is a pressure, just like family vlogging and these kids who have to pay their bills for their parents. That is a very powerful influence you have over your child. Like Cole Sprouse was saying, I was put into acting when I was since 8 months old, and I was the breadwinner for my family. Jeanette McCurdy, same way. You think those kids never wanted to have a normal childhood or wanted to play or do something else and they couldn't do it? Right? Because your parents have a massive amount of control over who you are and what you do. Right? I think we can all agree. Anybody here who has kids knows that they change their mind and their interests like day and night, all the time. So, and I know this is going to be very divisive. And honestly, it is part of this conversation, because when it comes to this, I think a lot of it is child exploitation. It is child exploitation specifically for people like Jazz Jennings' mom, Jonathan Saccone Joly, Jess fam, to use this as a platform to grow and make money. That's it. That's really what it comes down to. So let me reiterate that. If your cat is vegan, we all know who's making the choices. If your child, and I'm saying children under like 13, okay, are saying that they are this thing, we all know who's making the choices here. We all know what's happening. People with brains in their head anyway. And again, the reason that so many people are scared to have this conversation is because the world will label me they're going to say I'm the biggest transphobe on earth. I'm an enemy to everybody and everything else. When I just think I think that adults can do whatever they want, except compete against women. If you are a biological male and went through male puberty, okay, that's one thing I'll draw the line at. I think, nope. That should never be a thing. That's common sense, people. That's common sense to me. But the child side of this thing, I think it's common sense. And to me, that's just, I know that I speak a lot in black and whites, but that's black and white to me. That is common sense, that you do not stop a child from having puberty. You can't. And some people are like, oh, it's you're just pausing it. They can go back to it if they don't want it. And you fail to realize that specifically for males who are pausing puberty, if you were on puberty blockers for 3 to 4 years, do you know how much lung development, bone growth development you lose out on? Muscle development you grew? Because boys and girls, sorry guys to say this, biological fact, are different. Puberty sets us apart. We're basically the same until puberty, right? Girls and boys can compete the same level before puberty. They're basically the same. But as soon as puberty hits, the world changes for boys and girls completely. That is a biological fact. That's why you take someone like Leah Thomas, whatever her name is, swimming in the NCAA is destroying women's records because it's biological male who went through biological puberty. And regardless of whether or not you take these medicines that drop your testosterone, you still had the development. The development is everything. So it's just proof that if you miss out on that development as a boy growing up, you miss out on a lot. You really do. We're built different. We grow different. That is it. So people are giving the kids puberty blockers, and we all know now they're not as safe as everybody says they are. They really aren't. Okay? Some of them can chemically castrate your child. It is a dangerous place to be, and if you do that, I have no respect for you. If you allow a child, maybe 16, 17, to want to do that stuff, like you're getting into a little more gray area, because I do believe, I have a 16-year-old, I have a 21-year-old, and I know how smart and how dumb they were at that age too. But like, it's a little more gray there for me. But as an adult, 21 and over, even up to 25 is probably the best way. If you're 25 and you want to do all that stuff, more power to you. I mean, if that makes you feel good about yourself and you feel like that's been something that you've been pining for your whole life and everything else, and you go do that and it makes you happy, then go for it. I have no problem with that. As long as you respect women's spaces and you respect women's sports. That's a big one. So, but otherwise, do what you got to do if you're a consenting adult, which I say on here all the time. If you want me to use your pronoun, I'll use your pronoun. Okay? If you want me to treat you like that, I will. I absolutely will. But I think when it comes to kids, we have to have a bigger conversation about this. And so Let's get canceled. So now that I made it abundantly clear where I stand on this issue, and I don't think we can confuse that. And I know that people are going to drop and say, I can't believe you would say all these things and it's not the right thing. It's common sense. Okay? And I think that if you don't have common sense with this conversation and you want to just throw me away because I don't think like you think, because it's the popular way to think right now, I'm happy to have you and I'm happy to hear your conversation, right? But if you're willing to drop somebody over common sense, that's a you problem, not a me problem. I think the difference is, especially someone like me who's a libertarian, if you have a different view than me, I'm not going to throw you in the garbage. Okay, I'm willing to hear it. I'm willing to debate you. And I'm willing to be like, okay, that's what you believe. That's cool. We just disagree. But I'm finding on the other side more and more every single day, unlike far left-leaning people, that if you disagree with them, they will throw you in Mordor. You are a Nazi who should be thrown in a volcano because you think wrong. You dared to say something that I don't agree with. Do you guys notice that? 80% of those people on the center right would say, I don't hate you, we can exist. Whereas 90% of the people on the center left would say, I hate you, we can't be friends, burn in hell. That's the truth of the matter, the way the world works right now. That's the take. A lot of people are like, that's not the case. Well, that's my experience. That's my lived experience. So I realize this video is going to be very divisive, but it comes back to this. Jonathan Saccone Joly, who admits to the world that he is non-binary. He exists in the LGBTQIA plus spectrum. Okay, he admits it openly that he is transgender. So what are the odds? And there's been lots of people. There's been people who come on and say, there's a transgender activist out there saying who work in politics who say, I'm a transgender and both my kids, one's pan, one's this. How is that possible? Unless you are pushing that on your children, right? Because if you believe that transgender happens naturally inside of the world, even though there is no genetic marker for it, let's say you believe that, okay? And maybe it does. Okay, but there's no genetic marker that does mark people who are transgender. But let's say you believe it occurs naturally inside the human population. Okay, I'll be with you there. At what percentage? Is it something like 0.001? Probably, right? So what are the odds that someone like Jonathan Saccone Joly, who lives in that spectrum, in that world, has a son, who is transgender? What are the odds? So what I'm trying to tell you is, hopefully you're catching it, is that he pushed this on Edie to use her for clout and to build a platform for money and fame. Because it is popular to be this right now. And if you are a parent like this who does this, you are affirmed on social media like you're the king of the world, like he is. But don't take my word for it. Just look at their entire platform. They have been doing this since these kids were birthed. They've been exploiting them in their stories since they were born. So this is just the next one. Their shit was falling apart. At one point, Jonathan took all of his YouTube videos off. And he's like, I'm done with this. And then reversed it in less than a week. Because they have no other way to make any money. They have been exploiting their children since literal birth. Okay? So when this happened, he took advantage of that, Jonathan did, and then wrote a book about it to sell books and make money. But I'm telling you, the mathematical probability of having a transgender daughter, if you were transgender yourself, is astronomical, considering there is over 7 billion people on Earth. Okay? So what I'm telling you is that there's a contagion in this. There's a parent coercing a child here. That child does this thing and poof, gets all the attention. Edie has become the center of this channel in every way based on this video we're about to watch. Okay? Edie is now the star and they are taking advantage of that 100%. And they are not being celebrated for it, which is actually kind of crazy. Maybe on TikTok they are, but not on YouTube. People are waking up to this, which is why I'm more comfortable having this conversation now. And you're right, I can be cowardly in some of the stances I take. This one specifically in the past, and I still want to tread lightly. Today I'm not treading very lightly, but you still want to, because you still want to be a human. You still want to say, look, these are still people with feelings. They still need to be loved. They still need to be protected. But when parents do this stuff and capitalize on it, that should tell you everything you need to know. And so many of these public ones that are out there, they are capitalizing on it. Jennings' mom makes millions of dollars off Jazz. Millions. These people, hundreds of thousands, not millions, but they've made their millions on their channel. Okay? if you are capitalizing on it, even if it's for social clout or to be celebrated in your communities, you are capitalizing on it. If your child was truly going through this, your child could truly go through it with your support without it being public to the world. That's a thing that could happen. You do not have to tell the world. And this is all you need to know about the people that hate me for anything I say or anything that hate that conversation. Because what they'll say is something like this. And it's always like this. No matter what you're talking about, if it's a tough conversation. For this one, it's like, as a parent of, or as a transgender, or as a this, or as a person who had this happen to them, or as a this, they always start their phrase off, and I've used this too, as a person who has essayed as a child, okay? As a this, and I'm guilty of it, because I know that as soon as I say that phrase, I have the authority to talk on that thing. I do, and I've used it, and so many people do. As a this, and as a this, or this, as someone who has a this happen to me, or as a professional in this area, or as a this, I can speak on this. That has become how this works now, right? And again, that's somebody that has a lived experience. So yes, I do believe that people listen to them more and should, because they do have a lived experience in that thing. I can relate to this. Because I can relate to this because I. People celebrate being victims now. And that's where this comes down to. Jonathan Saccone Joly and his wife are absolutely capitalizing on this young child in every way. And nobody believes it. But I believe the pendulum is swinging back and people are starting to wake up to this. Because in the end, if this many children are doing this, and I know a lot of people are like, it's just not happening. Kids are just not getting surgeries, when it's not true. They are. Not on a high level, of course, I'll agree with you on that. It's not happening en masse. But taking drugs that stop the natural progression of your body is dangerous. And that is happening en masse with children, because you do it before puberty starts. And again, that can chemically castrate your child. Is that really what you want? Do you really want to make a choice for your kid that when they get older, they might change their mind and they can't have children because of the choices you made for them? Is that something you want to live with? And I think most people would say, I want to support my child. But would you support your child to the fact that when they got older, that they would eliminate them from the possibility of being able to have children? Would you really want to take that away from your child? Or could you support and love your child without doing all that stuff? Which is what I think you can do. But we're not allowed to have that conversation, are we? All right, let's look at this video quick.
Good morning. We are doing something very exciting today, aren't we?
Yeah.
That we've been waiting for a long time. And
I know, I'll stop this. This kid, if you guys want to know an example of grooming, right here. And not just into the transgender ideology. It's the grooming of being on camera and being the star. This kid is groomed. This is a perfect example of it.
we're going into London for Edie's first gender therapy appointment.
First? Yeah.
So it begins the journey.
Multiple.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. There is. But it's a good thing.
Okay.
Because
Anna's crying right there. And I'm going to say this. Not because I think she's happy and excited for Edie, but because I think she cannot effing believe what's happening. And it always gives away what she wears her shit on her sleeve, for sure. She knows what she's doing is wrong, regardless if it's just exploiting it. But she knows what she's doing is wrong.
I'm on my period. Which apparently is a talk.
Okay, it didn't save them, but it got them views. Like, it saved them monetarily. It didn't save them in the eyes of the public, but it absolutely, because here's the thing, people watched this kid grow up on the internet, and the reason that they're not on board for it is because they knew because they know this kid. Isn't that the craziest thing? They know this kid because they've seen them grow up on the internet. And that's why nobody believes it, because they know. And you should never know intimately that much about a child, and you do about this child.
Well,
But yeah, I'm on my period, which makes everything a little bit more stressful. Aww. Why?
See what she just said there? I'm really scared. I'm really scared. This kid is stressing out about going seeing a therapist.
Don't be scared. It's the next one. Oh, it's got pretty flowers outside, Edie.
I don't really
Here, this is bringing back memories.
when I get them, like,
Here you go.
Nice coat, John. Sorry, coat's ugly. Looks like they're in a sleeping bag.
How are you feeling?
Scared. There she says it again. She's scared.
Don't be scared.
Don't be scared. Let me film it all, though. Let me film it. If you don't think that they're exploiting this, why didn't you edit that out then? If that didn't matter, why didn't you edit that out? But they want you to see this drama, this part of this whole thing. You should be scared because you're going to walk into a clinic where you're not getting help. You're getting affirmed. That's it. There's nobody there to be like, okay, well, let's take a look at this for real. Does this person know that these people have been exploiting this child since birth? Right? Does the therapist know that they do this for money? That they film all of this for the world to see, and that this child has become this for this channel without this child's informed consent, by the way.
All right, so we're just out. I think I managed to like cry off this eye.
Yeah, Anna cried. She embarrassed us, Edie.
That's so funny. Why'd you cry? What are you crying about? So cry about what? Because that comes back to the question, the hypothetical, right? What are you crying about? If you're crying about the fact that you lost this person that was your son and now they're your daughter, you crying? Does that make you transphobic? Because you aren't celebrating and completely affirming it all? What were you crying about? See, that's the problem here. You're not even allowed to have any nuance in this conversation because the truth hurts, even though you don't want to answer it. The fact, and here's the thing, I know you're going to piss a lot of you off. The fact that you didn't answer it is more of an answer than the answer.
Was it good? You feel good?
Thumbs up or thumbs down or in the middle? Okay.
That doesn't sound like a positive experience.
Nervous about
The next time I got advice is when you came into this room with a nothing bad saying snacks on it. And you started walking.
Okay.
That's it. That's
Well,
your life. That'll be a memoir.
Thank you.
And part of this too is, again, I've said at the beginning of this one, that this child grows up in a world where the parents are narcissists who film their life, and so they're very self-centered. Obviously, anybody who does this is self-centered. There's nobody who does a family vlog that isn't self-centered. There's no way you can put your life online unless you're a narcissist. You can't. Okay, so they're self-centered. So a lot of these children don't get the attention that they so rightly deserve or need or crave. Okay, they don't. So when Edie put a dress on one day, whatever the case may have been, she got tons of attention for it. Attention that she craved from parents who want attention from the internet. That's got to mean something, right? And so then, oh, I got attention for this. Okay, let me continue. Like, oh, I get more attention. Now I'm the center of the attention for the whole family. That, again, this is a child, everybody. It's a child. Very basic, rudimentary understanding of what they need and how it worked out for her.
Thank you for your honesty. Sorry.
Friendship.
You got
Wow, such an interesting video.
toast. Okay, let's go try and get home.
So they took her shopping and got her candy. They took her get some toys and everything else. And so this is like, okay. I'm just saying, that now turns into an experience where she's like, I didn't like it. I was scared to begin with. And then I like it good or bad. She went, this, right? And then she gets to go shopping. So they're attaching this like, hey, you get stuff if you do this. That's my takeaway.
Century mode, so you don't have to worry about the car. Like, no.
It's not a Ferrari. It's a Ferrari car seat. But it's still $175,000 SUV. It's Model X. So this is what they did. And if you want any more proof that they're capitalizing on this and exploiting this child, they titled this video, Our Daughter's First Trip to a Gender Clinic. All they did was go. They took a train. They were literally, all they did inside the gender clinic was like, are you scared? And she said yes. And that was the whole video right there. That's all you know about it. You don't know anything about how the therapy went. None of that stuff. They're not trying to expose people. So this is what it looks like to take a kid gender therapy. This is what the therapist said. This is this and this and this. They probably didn't tell you because maybe the therapist, hopefully, was like, yeah, I'm not seeing it. Possibly. Maybe that's why they didn't say anything. Maybe that's why she cried. I don't know. They didn't say anything. But they damn well exploited it by putting it in the title, right? Could have just been said, this video could have been, took Edie to London for a day. But no, they used that thing, and of the entire, whatever it is, what is it? Of the entire 15-minute video, they did nothing. They said nothing. Who else does that? Jess fam. She'll say something about her daughter's sexuality inside the video. They'll be like, I'm gay, and that's it. That's the whole video. But they used that moment, that 2-second moment, for the clickbait of the video. They are clickbaiting their daughter's gender therapies. See, at the end of this video, I know that you think it's funny, but they do this because like, kick our other videos. These people live in this giant $2 million mansion in London or wherever the hell they live because they exploited their children online. They don't have a Model X, a Ferrari. They do have a Ferrari too. I don't know if he sold it or not, but they don't have anything, all the shit that they have. And they've gone through so many luxury vehicles in the past. I can't believe it's crazy. Without what they do. And of course, she's wearing protects trans kids because that's the hot topic right now, everybody. You can't deny it. You just can't. Jazz Jennings started this, like the whole thing with Jazz Jennings was the big one. And he's just kind of following in the footsteps of that. And monetizing and profiting off of it. Don't believe me about anything else. Fine. You can disagree on all the other shit, but you can't disagree with me on that. That they are monetizing this, whether or not it's real or not. Okay, but they are monetizing and making bank off of it. And that child now has the pressure on her to be that. And if she changes her mind for whatever reason, her life is over. She's screwed forever. They put her through puberty blockers and everything else. It's over. These parents should be ashamed of themselves. Parents who do this to their children, who take them to that level, should be ashamed of themselves. You can still love and support your child in every absolute way, even if they say they're all these things. And you can love and support them without doing any of the drugs or the affirmation therapies or anything like that. You can still do it, and you all know it. But if I were to say I would not let my kid take puberty blockers, I would be considered transphobic, and you know it. I would take the wait and watch approach until they're old enough to make decisions. I would take them to therapies. That's probably one of the most important things you could do. But I wouldn't take them to a gender clinic. You want to talk about echo chambers, those gender clinics exist to feed them into the system. Take them to a real therapist. How about that? Cool. Anyway, yeah. I know I'm going to lose subscribers over this. And honestly, at this point in my channel, these honest conversations, they have to take place because this is a big conversation in the world right now. And I think so many parents out there who follow me are scared to talk about this. And so I often say what you guys are all thinking. And you guys will say that a lot. And I think as a parent right now in this world, I sit there, my wife and I have conversations with us every day. Okay? Like, what if this happened? Whatever, and we're just like, it's such a important topic. The school boards are being overrun with parents talking about porn in the schools. And if a child says they are something, the teachers are being told not to tell parents. So, and I think this generation of parents that I'm in are probably the most accepting parents I've ever seen. I've never met a parent in my life, church or not. And I'm saying church, people in church would be completely loving of their child. I don't know anybody who would turn away their child for doing this. I don't know anybody, right? We're probably the most affirming parents of any generation right now. Okay. So why would a teacher not tell us? That scares a lot of people, and it should. Right? Teachers, if you go on like Libs of TikTok or whatever, you can see with your eyes. They don't have to say anything. They have teachers. If you walk into this classroom, it's trans flags, BLM flags. It's political ideologies and all this shit being force-fed into your kids' eyeballs every single day. And that's on purpose, everybody. That's on purpose. This world is crazy. That's why TikTok is dangerous. That's why social media for your kids is dangerous. Keep your kids off social media as long as possible. If you want normal, quote unquote, kids that don't have to suffer through a lot of the shit, keep them off social media. It's a toxic, cancerous waste dump for children. And you know it. So let me know what I got wrong below. I'm sure you will. I'm sure my haters are all going to make all the threads galore about how I'm such a transphobe and everything else. As a person that is a trans, and they're going to say as a person. And I need you to realize, whenever you hear someone say that, take everything they say next to the grain of salt. Even me. Okay? Because they might not be that person. They might just say that because they want you to hear what they have to say. In the end, yes, always love and support your children. Always do that. But never exploit them for their story and this type of thing. Ever. Never do that. No matter what the story is. Doesn't have to be the trans conversation. Anything. Stop exploiting your kids. I'll say this again before we close out. The non-answers are answers. So do that what you want. But be bold. Be bold for your kids. And do better. Okay? Because this is a conversation. And if you just ignore it by saying, oh, maybe it'll happen. I don't know. You should be having conversation with your children about this stuff. You absolutely should. 100%. And most of you don't. I think some parents are even so scared to have a conversation with their kids because they might think that somebody might get out that they said something and that they'd be considered transphobic. But I don't care. If people are going to label you transphobic for wanting to protect your kids and have honest conversations with them, okay, so what? So be it. Who cares? Who cares? What is that going to do to you? Who cares? Okay, thanks. I want to have a common sense conversation about this, and you want me to be a transphobe? Okay, fine. If common sense means I'm a transphobe, then okay. I guess I'll just have to live with that. That's a cross I'll have to bear. So everybody take a deep breath. You're gonna need that one today. So I don't know. Again, let me know what you think below. I'm sure, and I'm willing to read other books, podcasts on this whole thing. I'm not saying I'm always right. And when it comes to children in this thing, I think common sense is the answer here. What does your gut tell you, right? I think it's about what your gut tells you. And as parents, we definitely have that sixth sense in your gut. Okay? So thanks for being here for these tough conversations, these hard ones. Stop watching these people, okay? And stop being afraid to have a common sense conversation with those around you in your life, okay? Really stop being afraid. Grow some balls, protect your kids. I'll see you tomorrow.